This video will be the first in a series. I don't know how many we'll end up with, but to go over the entire Title 14 Part 107. I just bought a DJI Mini 3 from Costco and did not realize that I would need to have a license or take a test in order to upload videos to YouTube if you're monetized, and probably ought to take the test anyway if you're uploading videos to YouTube with the intent of being monetized. Probably a gray area. So I would recommend taking the test for 107 regardless of whether you're monetized or not. And of course, if you're using it for any commercial purposes whatsoever, if the intent is that you are going to earn money from it eventually or immediately, then you should take the 107 test. So my intent here is to go over all of 107. I am a former airline pilot and current corporate jet captain, and so I do know a lot, and I am a former instructor from a long time ago for private pilots, and most recently in the flight sim for the ATR 4272-600. So a lot of the items that are on the test I am very familiar with, but there is a significant amount that I'm not familiar with because it's specific to drones. I have no experience with drones except for the past month after purchasing this drone at Costco. So when we do open up the regulation pages under ECFR Title 14 and Part 107, you should follow along and go ahead and read the regulation, and I will give some kind of explanation to the regulation. I've already read over the first Subpart A, and this video will contain all of Subpart A. And again, the point of this is to prepare you for passing the written test. What I know so far is that it cost about $175, and this is currently June of 2024. And for me, I live up just below Abbotsford, Canada in the US, near Maple Falls, Washington, and I have to drive probably 2 to 3 hours to go take the test down in the Seattle area. And to reiterate, this is for the United States FAA authorization to fly a drone for commercial purposes. That's what this video is regarding. So I wanted to also reiterate that it appears that we only need to study 107. Initially, I thought we'd have to study Part 91, which is the rules for pilots in manned aircraft, but upon further evaluation, I have determined that it's all under Part 107 for us, all the laws. Also, under Part 61, you usually find that's where you find all of the regulations for getting your private pilot license, a recreational pilot license, commercial, airline transport, multi-engine, instrument, all of that. All of those requirements are under Part 61 of Title 14. But it appears that everything we need is under 107. If we determine later that there are other areas that we need to study outside of 107 to pass the written test, we'll cover that. But for now, it looks like all we have to concentrate on is Title 14, Part 107. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the one I bought and what I know so far about it. The DJI Mini 3. I did not buy the Mini 3 Pro, and that's what this one's showing. So let's see. Mini 3 bundle. Here. This is not the one I bought. Well, actually, this is. It says Pro Drone Bundle. $649. I did not pay $649. But it looks like the same controller. Oh, this has a 3 battery pack. I wish I had that. Yeah, that would be nice, but not for $649. Maybe gives you. Okay. Well, we can take a look at it like this too. So, well, disregard that. Anyway, this is the drone I have. This is the controller I have, and I have to use my cell phone and attach it to there. And you have to use the correct cord, because I used the wrong cord that they provided initially. But we'll get into the specific drone maybe in another video. But just so that you know, this is the one I have. This one is less than 0.55 pounds, which is less than 250 grams, which gives us a more lenient set of rules. We'll go over that later as to what that allows you to do, but what I think at this point is that if it's under 0.55 pounds, which this drone is, or 250 grams or less, you don't have to register it with the FAA. As long as you're not using it for commercial purposes, you still have to follow all the 107 rules and be aware of them. But you don't have to register, and you don't have to have the 107 license unless you're using it for commercial purposes. That's what I understand so far. With that being said, let's get right into the regulations. And I like to start from the big picture. Where do the regulations actually come from? They come from the Code of Federal Regulations, which now are called ECFR because we have them available in their current form online. And up here you can see in the address bar, it's www.ecfr.gov. That is the real set. Oops, what happened there? Okay, ecfr.gov. We'll go straight to where we're concerned with initially, and then I'll backtrack here a little bit. So we're looking at Title 14, Aeronautics and Space. These are all the federal regulations that have to do with aeronautics and space. And Title 107, Part 107 under Title 14 is going to be under Chapter 1, Federal Aviation Administration, Department of Transportation, between 1 and Part 199. But before we click on there, let's just look at some of the other federal regulations and the titles to get you a feel for the big picture of the federal regulations. So some of the things that some of the areas that are shown here are Title 10 for energy. That's going to have to do with nuclear reactors and stuff like that. We have federal elections. Here's all of banks and banking. Again, these are federal regulations, not state or city. I was looking at this with my daughter because she's a school teacher and she is regulated under state regulations, the state of Washington. But there are some federal regulations for education as well, which the Secretary of Education is in charge of. But again, all of these laws come from Congress. A bill is introduced. The lower house or the House of Representatives votes on them. If it's passed, it goes to the upper house or the Senate, and If it's passed there, then it goes to the president's desk, and the president has the option to veto it or pass it into law. That's where all of these regulations come from. So anyway, you have education here also, parks and forests, the postal service, public health, and it goes all the way down to wildlife and fisheries. By the way, transportation is something I've had to deal with for aviation. So we're dealing with Title 14 only, aerospace, aeronautics, and space. And going to Title 14 and 1 through 199. And we will choose that again right here, Chapter 1, Part, well, okay. And again, you can just search for Part 107, but I wanted you to know where it actually comes from. And here is where 107 will be under Subchapter F, Air Traffic and Operating Rules. And specifically for drones, we're down here at Part 107, Small Unmanned Aircraft Systems. Sometimes you will see UAS in capital letters with a small s in front of it. That's where this comes from. Part 107's title, Small Air-Manned Aircraft Systems. So please follow along here. I hope it's not too blurry on the screen here. So applicability. Basically, it's saying that this Part 107, by the way, before I go further, we're going to cover all of Subpart A, which goes down to Subpart B, ending in 107.9. And we'll complete the video today, and then the next video will begin at Subpart B, 107.11. So this section, or this entire Part 107, does not apply to air carrier operations, which are like airlines or air charter operators that carry passengers or freight or have some other operation that's governed by the air carrier. It does not apply to them, basically manned operations. It does not apply to any aircraft subject to the provisions of 49. Part 49, I believe, is what they say, or what they mean to say. It does not apply to the holders of an exemption. I don't think this is something we need to worry about. Just know this for the written test in case it comes up. And for any operation that a person elects to conduct under Part 91. So if you're flying under Part 91, which is manned operations, this Part 107 does not apply to you at all. Okay, let's go to Part 107.2. Just memorize this for the test. The provisions of Part 21 of this chapter do not apply to small air-manned aircraft systems. I've looked that up and it clearly doesn't have anything to do with us. But it does say, let's see. Let's just read it. The provisions of Part 21 of this chapter do not apply to small unmanned aircraft systems operated under this part, unless the small unmanned aircraft system will operate over human beings in accordance with Part 107-140, which we'll cover later. Part 107.3, we have some definitions, not too many of them. If you have to go ahead and read these yourselves. I'm just going to go over a couple of them that might not be clear. Small unmanned aircraft means an unmanned aircraft weighing less than 55 pounds, not to be confused with 0.55 pounds. So, 55 pounds, that's a pretty big UAV. And small unmanned aircraft is less than 55 pounds. Small unmanned aircraft system, small UAS, means a small unmanned aircraft and its associated elements, including communication links and the components that control the small unmanned aircraft, that are required for the safe and efficient operation of the small unmanned aircraft in the national airspace system. Unmanned aircraft means an aircraft operated without the possibility of direct human intervention from within or on the aircraft. So an unmanned aircraft is an aircraft that is not a manned aircraft. No humans are on board this aircraft operating it. A visual observer, which we'll learn more about further into this Part 107, means a person who is designated by the remote pilot in command to assist the remote pilot in command and the person manipulating the flight controls of the small UAS to see and avoid other traffic or objects aloft or on the ground. So a visual observer would be an extension of the pilot in command to help him avoid other objects. (107.5) Falsification, reproduction, or alteration. Bottom line, tell the truth in your paperwork, in your statements. I just think you ought to read this one on your own time and memorize it for the test. 107.7 Inspection, testing, and demonstration of compliance. This would be a good one for you to just read. So, the main point here is that you have to show your license or any required paperwork if asked by the FAA administrator or his representative, or which basically means an FAA inspector. He can show you his badge. I think it's called a 110 badge or an A110. Anyway, an authorized representative of the NTSB. And again, they should be able to display the appropriate badge. But you also have to comply with the request if a federal, state, or local law enforcement officer asks to see your documentation or your 107 certificate. An authorized representative of the TSA. Okay, just read this in detail so that you can be ready to pass the test on this question. But the main takeaway again is even law enforcement that has nothing to do with aviation can request that you show them your license and your ID. And when I say license, I mean your 107. (107.9) Safety event reporting. Basically, within 10 days, if you've injured someone, basically if they've had to go to the hospital probably, they've lost consciousness. And again, it says serious injury, so it is subjective there. Obviously, a scratch is not something that's going to require you to make a report to the FAA. But, you know, if you determine it's a serious injury, I think if they went to the hospital, definitely you have to report it. So, and damage to any property that does not exceed $500, you do not have to report. But anything over $500 to the property, any value over $500, if it is damaged to that extent, needs to be reported to the FAA within 10 days. Blah, blah, blah. Excuse me for screwing that up. Okay, we're at Subpart B, so that concludes this video. We'll see you in the next video, and hopefully I have put it up in the end screen. If it's not there, it just means I haven't made it yet. I am studying to take this test myself, and I'm going over this, and I figured I might as well go over this on a video so that we can do it together. Thank you. Oh, and please subscribe. And if you can, if you liked this, please like it, and please share with us where you're watching from, and please click on the notification bell so that you can be notified when the next video in this series is available.